students. Welcome to StudyIQ's initiative, the podcast. I am your host, Dipansh Moorjani. Welcome all. In the last episode of the podcast, we had discussed some important concepts of our constitution. All the new listeners can listen to our previous podcast so that you can understand all the important concepts till the rights provided by our constitution. Today, we will discuss three important concepts. First will be rule of law. Second important concept will be due process of law versus process established by law. And third concept will be judicial review. Sir, as our first concept of the day is rule of law, we want you to elucidate a bit on this.
A.V. Dicey, in his book The Law of the Constitution, written in 1885, has given the following three important implications of the doctrine of rule of law. First is that absence of arbitrary power, that is, no man is punished except for a breach of law. Equality before the law, that is, equal subjection of all citizens, which are rich or poor, high or low, official or non-official, to the ordinary law of the land. Third is the primacy of the rights of an individual. That is, the Constitution is the result of the rights of the individual, as defined and enforced by the courts of law, rather than the Constitution being the source of the individual right. Rule of law, which need to be understood in Indian context. The preamble of the Constitution itself prescribes the idea of justice, liberty, and equality. This concept are further enshrined under Part 3 of the Constitution and are made enforceable. However, there are some exceptions to the rule of law. Some exceptions are as following. Equality of law does not mean that power of private citizens are the same as the power of public official. We will try to understand with a simple example. A police officer has the power to arrest, which the private citizen does not have. The rule of law does not prevent certain classes of persons from being subject to special rules. For example, the armed forces are governed by military laws. Ministers and other executive bodies are given wide discretionary powers by the statute. Certain members of the society are governed by special rules in their professions like lawyers, doctors, and nurses.
After discussing rule of law, we will talk about the next concept. In the process of lawmaking, there are two distinguished methods. First, procedure established by law, and second, due process of law. There are a lot of students who face difficulty in understanding these methods. Sir, can you please clear our doubts on these two distinguished methods?
A procedure established by law is a law that is valid only when it complies with the prescribed procedure. Following this law meant that the individual could be deprived of a personal liberty. The judgment in the Menka Gandhi versus Union of India case brought a shift to this law. The difference between the due process of law and procedure established by law was realized during the hearing of this case. Judicial activism emphasized giving more meaning to the term procedure established by law. In this case, petitioners means Menka Gandhi's passport was confiscated without prior notice. Following this, the scope of Article 21 was extended along with the rights to travel out of the country. The demand was to make Article 21 fair, reasonable, and just. This made way of procedural due process and establishing the links between Article 19, 14, and 21 at the same time. Whereas due process of law is an American concept taken from the Magna Carta, Clause 39. This doctrine sees that the law is fair and that the law deprives a personal liberty or not. Under this doctrine, if the Supreme Court finds that the law is unfair and it is depriving the person's liberty, the court may declare that law as null and void.
Sir, the next important concept is judicial review. So, what is your take on the importance of this concept?
Judicial review is defined as a doctrine under the executive and legislative actions which are reviewed by the judiciary. Even though we have in India the principle of separation of power of three arms of the state, namely executive, legislative and judiciary. Judiciary is vested with the power of review over actions of the other two arms. Judicial review is considered a basic structure in Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case. Judicial review is the power of the courts to consider the constitutionality of acts of organs of government and it will declare unconstitutional if it violates or is inconsistent with the basic principles of the Constitution. The Indian Constitution adopted the judicial review on the lines of American Constitution.
So, judicial review becomes an important concept of our Constitution. Dear listeners, this brings us to the end of this podcast. In the next episode, we will start from separation of powers. Till then, stay connected with StudyIQ. Keep studying. And you can listen to this podcast on various audio streaming platforms like Google Podcast, Kuku FM, Spotify, Hubhopper, Apple Podcast, etc. Links are pinned in the comment section. Thank you.